Continue. Part number 1. Scope of restriction. The restriction against performing Melachah on behalf of a Gentile applies to acts that are prohibited rabbinically as well as those prohibited biblically. For example, it is forbidden to carry something for a Gentile through the public domain where transporting is prohibited biblically, or through the carmelists where transporting is prohibited rabbinically, even though transporting is permitted on Yom Tov for the sake of the Jew. Okay. So let's try to understand what it says here. So from the beginning, and we're going to explain. The restriction against performing Melachah on behalf of a Gentile applies to acts of prohibited rabbinically as well as those prohibited biblically. So of course there's different level, but as we said, for us everything is forbidden. Doesn't matter biblical or rabbinical, but rabbinical in some cases of necessity in which rabbis allow, so we can go to lenient side when they allow. For example, it is forbidden to carry something on for a Gentile in public domain. So there is a public domain and there is a semi-public domain. Just to remind us, right? So the public domain is actually a road. It has to be certain width. What is the width? I think it's like 18 cubits, I think. So it's 36 feet. So it's pretty long road, pretty wide road. And there are different opinions. The most common opinion that 600,000 people have to travel this road every day, back and forth. Okay, so it's a I guess in the main cities, in the main streets, yeah, you would have this much traffic. Yeah, so in this, right, and I think another qualification, it has this street must go like from one end of the city to another. It should be straight. I don't remember all of the qualifications, but basically even let's say 600,000 people. So you can see that most of our roads where we live are not like that, not 600,000 people, right? So, and this semi-public domain are called carmelists. And our rabbi said, so carmelists, basically it was your yard, right? And it's your house and between the houses. So all of this between the houses, you can do erov, and it's going to be like a private domain. But it's my yard and somebody else's yard, so they connected. I mean, they connected, but still we're not allowed to carry from one another. So that's a carmelist domain. So, and our rabbi said today, all of these other streets, all of the other roads, we consider them to be as carmelists, right? Carmelists, but we treat them as a public domain. Okay, so that's the thing. Okay, so. So on Yom Tov, you are allowed to carry this carmelis. 1 second. This carmelis for the use of Yom Tov. Two further common examples of this prohibitions are: number 1, it is forbidden to cook specifically for Gentile maid or cleaning help. Okay. So meaning if she's living in help. Right, and you cook for Yom Tov, so it's not specifically for her, but in general. So there's no problem; she can eat, right? So I mean, if you're responsible for her food, but specifically for her, not allowed. And number 2, a Jewish chef in a hotel may not cook specifically for Gentile guests or staff members. So that's the thing. So it's a Jewish hotel, right? So I guess it's a Jewish hotel. Otherwise, they were going to make him, right? So and unless he knows that there is other Jews who will benefit from this, he's not allowed to cook for Gentile staff members, guests or staff members. Okay, very good examples. Continue. Qualifications of the biblical restrictions. Qualifications to the biblical restrictions. So it says, there is an important qualification to the biblical rule against doing Melachah on behalf of Gentile. We learn in chapter 4 that when doing Melachah, to fulfill a Yom Tov need, one is allowed to increase the amount of the product with which he does the Melachah, provided that everything can be done with the same act. For example, one who needs to cook one piece of meat is permitted to cook the full pot, even though he will not need extra portions on Yom Tov. It follows that under the biblical law, one who needs to cook or do another melacha for the benefit of Jews may increase the amount on behalf of Gentiles. Okay, so let's do this piece from the beginning, even though we discussed it before, but here's a new information. So one more time. There is an important qualification to the biblical rule against doing melach on behalf of Gentile. Right? So we're talking about biblical rule. Okay. We learn in chapter 4 that when doing melacha to fulfill the Yom Tov need, one is allowed to increase the amount of food. So we said if you need to cook the soup or chicken or whatever, so if it can be done in the one setting, right, same almost the same efforts for you, so you're allowed to do that. So instead of one piece of chicken, you can cook 20, right? But if it's would require do it separately, like an example that we gave, well, not give, but I think it's a good example of pancakes, right? So you would need if you need to do it like individually, so of course it would not be allowed, because you would need to exert much more efforts than cooking chicken, right? So you put everything in one pot and that's it. It's cooked on your own. But now, if you want to do pancakes, each individual, a small one, this one, that one, so that's the issue. Would not be allowed. Okay. For example, one okay, so we said full pot. Okay. So continue. It follows that under the biblical law, one who needs to cook or do anything melacha for the benefit of Jews may increase the amount on behalf of Gentiles. So again, it's not on behalf of Gentiles, but you just don't count, right? Maybe everybody going to eat triple portions today, right? So there is no problem. So it can increase. So same idea. Any questions on what we said so far? Okay, so continue. Rabbinical decree. The sages were concerned that if one would take advantage of this dispensation of the increase in the amount on behalf of a Gentile, he might ultimately come to cook pots specifically for the benefit of Gentile. This would be a violation of the biblical prohibition against Melachah. They therefore prohibited the increase in the amount for the sake of Gentile. Okay. So biblically, technically, right? Biblically it would be allowed, but rabbinically it's not allowed. Furthermore, the sages prohibited the invited Gentile of Yom. Okay, no, that's a separate issue. So let's do one at a time. The sages were concerned that if one would take advantage of dispensation, meaning that you can, since you're allowed to cook for Jews, you're allowed to cook for Gentiles. And then, just to make an example, a person found out that these Gentiles like this and this dish. So he said, if I'm allowed to cook, so I'm going to cook for them different dish, whatever they like. That's the problem. Right? So dispensation increase in the amount of behalf of the Gentile, he might ultimately come to cook a pot specifically for the benefit of the Gentile. So as we said, so many people, since they do not learn Halachos in details, or even they learn once and never go back and review, so they can get confused, like very simple. Continue. This would be a violation of the beneficial prohibition, of the biblical prohibition against Melachah. They therefore prohibited increasing the amount for the sake of Gentile. Okay. So let's do this one more time. One second. Cook specific Gentile. This would be a violation of biblical prohibition against Melachah, right? Meaning if they're going to cook only for Gentiles, they therefore prohibited creating increasing amount for the sake of Gentiles. So why? Because person might come to get to cook for Gentiles separately. Biblically, it is allowed. Rabbinically, no. Furthermore, the sages prohibited inviting Gentiles on Yom Tov meal. So as we said before, this decree was enacted out of the concern that one might cook extra pot of food specifically on behalf of Gentile guests. Even if one has already cooked all his foods for the meal, he may not invite Gentile lest he come to cook extra pot on behalf of the guests. So even though people might say, no, I'm not going to cook. I have more than enough. I have I invited 5 people. I have food for 17 people. It does not make any difference. So your own calculation is no consequence, right? So sages say, don't invite them, even if you have more than enough food. Even the most common question: what's the problem with the first night, right? Because first like Pesach night, right? Because all of the foods are cooked before that. No, but as I said, no, it's a big difference. Okay, not allowed. Not allowed. Okay. Right? Why? Because the same they might get to eat more. Maybe they would find out that maybe it's over salted, maybe under salted, this and that, and they would come to recook it with the more salt, less salt on Yom Tov itself on behalf of Gentiles. That's the issue. Okay, so continue. Nevertheless, since these aspects of the prohibitions are rabbinical, there is certain situation in which they are suspended. Let us proceed to examine these rules in details. Okay, so of course there is a exception, and one exception, as we learned before, as when of course Gentile just show up without invitation. So of course you can invite him to the table, and he can eat with you because it was not planned. But planned, not allowed.